Hey, it's Teresa from Life Beyond Diabetes. And first of all, today, happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. That's my cheesy joke for the day. All right, got that out of the way. So today I'm going to talk about type 1 versus type 2 diabetes. There's a lot of confusion about what those two diseases are. And yes, I said two diseases. They are not the same disease. People talk about diabetes as if it were one thing. It's actually two very different diseases. So first, type 1 disease, significantly less common than type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is an autoimmune disease that is it's a disease that the body's immune system has attacked the pancreatic cells that create insulin. So someone who has type 1 diabetes is not able to make their own insulin. So they have to take insulin for the rest of their lives because they're not able to process the sugar in their bodies without insulin. So if they don't take insulin, they will not survive. So when people say, oh, if they just eat healthy and exercise, they'll be okay. No, that doesn't work for people with type 1 diabetes. And I'll say, frankly, that doesn't completely work for anybody with either kind of diabetes, but that particularly is not a solution for people with type 1 diabetes. They have to take insulin every day for the rest of their lives, no matter what. So that's the primary thing about type 1 diabetes. I made it sound a lot simpler than it actually is, but that's type 1 diabetes in a nutshell. Type 2 diabetes is actually, even though it's called diabetes, it's kind of the opposite of that. Type 2 diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance. Now, I've written a lot about insulin resistance over on the blog, and I will link to one of the blog articles in this Facebook post when I get the video up. And type 2 diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance, and that means that the body is not able to use the insulin that it has. So in type 2 diabetes, the person with type 2 diabetes is still making insulin. In fact, people who are newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes tend to have way too much insulin on board. Now, later in the course of their type 2 diabetes, as their pancreas is wearing out from producing all this excess insulin, they might be having less and less insulin. And sometimes their pancreas wears out and they do eventually need to go on insulin because they're not producing enough insulin. But that's not because of an autoimmune disease. That's because their pancreas basically got tired and is worn out from making all that insulin. So with type 2 diabetes, the treatment goal is to sensitize the body to the insulin that you already have. So that can be done that's where those lifestyle treatments, particularly for people in early type 2 diabetes, those lifestyle treatments really make a big difference. So eating a low carb diet, and improving insulin sensitivity through exercise and stress reduction and sleep and all those other things that I talk about elsewhere on ways that you can improve your insulin sensitivity. And of course, the medications that people with type 2 diabetes take, they're all aimed at improving insulin sensitivity. So in a nutshell, those are the differences between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Now, it used to be that type 1 was called juvenile diabetes and type 2 was called adult onset diabetes. And we don't call them that anymore because, for one thing, with the obesity epidemic, we are finding that people with type 2 diabetes is sometimes now seen in adolescents and even in young children, because as you know, we know that obesity goes hand in hand with insulin resistance, and we're seeing insulin resistance in younger and younger children. So we're seeing type 2 diabetes in younger and younger children. So that's one reason we don't call it adult onset anymore. We also are finding that sometimes people are misdiagnosed with type 2 diabetes when really they're having the autoimmune caused diabetes, that is the pancreatic failure to produce insulin as adults. So there's some overlap between in ages, and there's also, of course, overlap between, people with type 1 diabetes can become insulin resistant as well. So there is some overlap between the two as well. So in a nutshell, that's type 1 and type 2 diabetes. If you have any questions, as always, please leave a comment, send a DM, drop me a line in my comment page. I'd love to hear from you. Also, I still want to know what else, other questions you might have for me. I'd be happy to answer them. I will see you right back here tomorrow at 2:30 Pacific. Bye.